Hello everyone, welcome to my latest video where we will be diving into the essential tools needed for taking your model building skills to the next level. So, it's been a year since I lost myself in scale modeling and built my first model kit. At the beginning I bought a lot of tools and materials that I had seen others use while watching videos. Now, after a year and building 8 model kits, I can share some of my experiences with you about what I have actually used and what I haven't touched at all. So let's start with snippers. I actually bought a cheap wire cutter, which happens to do the job quite nicely. It cuts the parts off in the way it should, however you should be quite careful when removing transparent parts from the sprue, as using snippers can cause some inside cracks which are quite noticeable. That's why it is much better to cut these parts off using a knife and then sand off the extra bits. At least that is what I have learned so far. Let me know if there are any other ways for doing that kind of job, maybe by leaving a comment. Next. The knife I'm using is the Alpha 5. It is a really handy tool that can be used for a variety of tasks, like cutting off extra bits or trimming decals. It is quite important to keep changing the blade quite often, as there is nothing worse than a jagged edge of the masking tape cut. You can replace the dull blade with a new one in a couple of seconds. Just be extremely careful, as this kind of knives are really sharp. Now, tweezers. I don't use crosslock tweezers as I don't have one. I only use 2 pairs of tweezers, a regular one for manipulating small parts to get them in the place where they should be, and another one that is dedicated only to decals. Tamiya's tweezers have a really fine tip which helps a lot with working on decals. Next, a hobby hand drill with different size of drill tips. It is really helpful with enlarging holes for body parts like door handles, indicators or wipers. You can also use it to deepen the muffler tips to add a bit more detail to them. And an engraving tool. Some of the model kits have body parts such as doors or hood lines that are not deep enough. Then you can use an engraving blade to make them deeper and more visible once you apply a black wash. However, as this blade is quite sharp, you have to be careful while doing this job, as it is quite easy to make scratches on nearby parts accidentally. If lines are so shallow that it is impossible to identify the curve, you can always use masking tape as a blade guide. Masking tape. I use it quite heavily, 18, 5, 3 and 1 mm. Different widths allow you to mask smaller or bigger parts, and together with a sharp knife you can also mask unusual shapes like window seals or bumpers. Different sizes save time, as you don't need to cut narrow stripes from the wider masking tape. Sometimes I also use masking tape dedicated for curves, but it's really rare, as it is easier to stick white masking tape and then cut along the window line, for instance. Then sanding paper, sponges and sticks. These tools were the most often used ones, as they are applicable for parts preparation and later for polishing. A 3000 sponge is used to dull the body before covering it with primer. 600 and 1000 sanding sticks to smooth out the seam lines or these extra bits of pieces which remain after cutting them from the sprue. Then 4000, 6000, 8000 water sanding paper is used to prepare the body surface before polishing with compounds. I also bought sponges and sanding paper with different grit sizes, but I have never gone beyond the values that I have just mentioned. Let's move to polishing then. Polishing compound sponges were used only once. They are really helpful when it comes to embossed parts of the body, as their surface close to the edges is hard to reach with a compound applicator cloth. However, once I switched from manual to mechanical polishing, I no longer need any cloths or sponges. A Dremel-like tool with a cotton polisher speeds up the time spent on polishing significantly, with a much better result in comparison to manual methods. By the way, it is worth softening the cotton polisher by moisturizing it with water and soap, so the compound will distribute much easier then. Okay, so now let's go to paintbrushes and airbrush with mandatory accessories like a compressor or a cleaning pot. I am using Ammo Air Cobra 0.3. It is easy to disassembly for cleaning and everything works well after 1 year. The trigger moves smoothly and the needle is still straight as it should be. When it comes to the compressor, you need to remember that the longer you use it, the more water can accumulate inside the tank. That's why it is quite important to unscrew the drain valve and wait for all the water to flow out. This water can cause rusting in a longer period of time, so it's better to keep it clean. When it comes to paintbrushes, I only use size 1 and 0 and hardly ever I go with size 4. What's more, a painting palette will also help you a lot with mixing paints. Okay, so those were the main tools which I use during building model kits. Others are quite common, like soft and hard cotton buds, pipettes or toothpicks. I guess Patafix, the removable adhesive pads that you can shape as you wish, are really worth mentioning. You can use it as a holder for parts that you are going to paint, and what's more, it is reusable, so you can use it quite a lot of times before it loses its adhesiveness. For instance, if you wish to paint the body, you can stick everything to a small bottle instead of buying a Spraywork painting stand set, which honestly I personally really like. Okay, that's it. I hope that this video brought you closer to my toolset. Let me know if you find this content interesting by leaving a comment. Have a great time building model kits. Cheers!